evening, everyone. Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for another stream. This time around, we're going to be dabbling in some vintage. I found this sweet 5.0 deck list by CSO. I don't know how to pronounce that. That is like absolutely the sort of cards that I enjoy playing, so I figured I would give it a spin. So essentially, this is a Hatebears deck, very much along the lines of Legacy White Eldrazi, a little bit less so Death and Taxes. This doesn't have like the Wastelands or Rishadan Ports or Ghost Quarters sort of things that you might be expecting from those sorts of decks. Essentially, this deck is looking to play taxing card after taxing card until your opponent isn't really able to do much of anything at all. So the deck is going to be constructed a little bit differently from how you might construct a legacy deck of this style because you have to hate on different things and the format is operating at a different speed. So basically 100% of the time the deck is looking to play a hateful card on turn 1 and follow it up with a second hateful card on turn 2. The thing is, though, by vintage standards, Thought-Knot Seer can be a turn 1 play. Like Ancient Tomb Double Moxen or Black Lotus plus land can turn this into a turn 1 play. So the deck has some weird additions to kind of make the Thought-Knot Seers work. It's playing Shephit Dunes, which can tap for white or colorless, as well as serve as an anthem effect later on in the game, as an additional colorless source. And oh, this one wasn't playing Crystal Vein. One of the other deck lists I was looking at was playing Crystal Vein. So apologies, that one's not actually in this deck list. We have some fan favorites here. Luminarch Aspirant is actually surprisingly a good card in Vintage. I wouldn't have expected this card to quite make the cut there, but it turns out that growing your creatures to be larger than a 4/4 is incredibly relevant in the format because of how prevalent the Hollowvine deck is. So Luminarch Aspirant's ability to stack up counters on, like, say, a first strike creature or like another creature that's already somewhat large, like an Eldrazi Displacer, is actually pretty cool. And when you get to go and do that, and then all of a sudden you can trade with the Hollow One and your hateful cards stick around, you're actually in business. This deck also has Archon of Emeria, which like is pretty annoying as a turn 1 play. This doesn't quite make the cut in Legacy most of the time. We'll see how it feels in Vintage. But like stopping PO from comboing off while also hating on non-basic lands like workshops and bazaars seems like it might be reasonable. I don't know how I feel about the Palace Jailers. I'm running this deck list as it was submitted by the person who 5-0'd it. I haven't made any changes. At a glance, my guess is that Palace Jailer is a little sketchy, that there should be a 4th Thalia in the main deck, and that there should be a 4th Glow Rider in the main deck if we're really looking to like step up those cards, but we'll see how it actually plays out in practice. The sideboard is very full of graveyard hate. I'm guessing that the like Dredge Hogak sort of matchups might be a little rough based on what I'm seeing here. And rather than running something like Deafening Silence, this deck is running Angel's Grace, which seems like it's there mostly to meme on Doomsday, but we'll see if it has other applications as well. With that said, I think I'm just going to go ahead and hop into a league and see how this goes. Go vintage league. And so. Let's see if we're burning 100 play points or if something here actually ends up being realistically good. It'll be a little bit hard to tell early on. Pretty excited for Vintage and Legacy right now. Card availability is a huge issue right now, but there's all sorts of new toys that theoretically I can play around with once they're on Card Hoarder. The courts seem really cool. The Hull Breacher and Opposition Agent seem to be like really interesting cards. I'm excited to see how they perform. I have seen some very, very spicy deck lists on Twitter that I have like really been enjoying. We'll see how viable some of these things are once people like actually know what's going on and know what to play around. But people are absolutely getting people with Hullbreacher and Opposition Agent right now. There was a pretty good story floating around from earlier today about how someone almost like just dropped their entire event after getting like their fetch land opposition agented on turn one off a dark ritual. They were just like not prepared for that. Chains of Mephi, stop, please. That's pretty good. Opponent, please. Please. Oh, opponent made it in time. Great. I don't know that I'm allowed to keep no power hands with this deck, especially on the draw. I think I'm going to go ahead and mulligan this one and try to find a turn one play. Yeah, this is going to be much better. Let's assume that Eldrazi Displacer is the card that does not fit into this hand. Oh no, I forgot to change my planes art. That's unfortunate. Oh well. Yo? This counters Moxen, doesn't it? Yeah, that's not good for me. Um, Hopefully our opponent can't do anything cool on their turn two. And then I can like start dropping Hatebears. It's if my opponent starts casting something like an Ancestral or a PO this turn that I will be scared. I don't know which one of my bears to drop first. Either Spirit of the Labyrinth or Archon. And that's Merchant Scroll for Ancestral. Yep. Shit. This is exactly what I did not want. Oh, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, very much appreciated. The site is in desperate need of some upgrades. For sure. I think I'm just going to go ahead and put the Spirit into play, even though it's like not the most mana efficient play that I have that I have access to. Because stopping my opponent from like pondering, brainstorming, POing, all of that sort of stuff is really good. I am making my opponent think. That's always good. But I don't know what they're thinking about. Like, if my opponent can Force of Will, this seems like a good situation to just Force of Will. If my opponent can Brainstorm, they could Brainstorm off the Lotus Petal as to not Brainstorm lock themselves. So, what's the pause for? I mean, that's a valuable card. I can get not wanting to pitch that to Force of Will if that's your only blue card. Let's say non-creature spells. ER Fish does nothing. Oh, Cavernous Souls is hot. Cavernous Souls is really hot. The question is, how do I use it? Uncounterable Cat. I can put it on Cleric, and then I can get a Luminarch Aspirant uncounterable too. That makes this turn awkward. I could just put it on Human and Palace Jailer Lavinia. I actually don't hate that. My Moxen becomes live later. Then if they just like combo off, that line is embarrassing. This Palace Jailer isn't live unless I put it on Human, though. Maybe that doesn't matter. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Nope, 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 nope. Cleric. Yeah, that's not bad. I probably just want to play the Archon this turn, though, rather than the Palace Jailer. This costs me 2 life. This costs me 1 life. I can't do a second spell no matter what here. Oh, I can just make colorless with this. Oh, is this a hard cast Force of Will? That would shut off Mox Opal Metalcraft. So this is a 2-for-1 for me here. Put on Luminarch, attack with both, hit in for 5. I think so. Okay, so that will probably be my opponent's only opportunity to trade that Lavinia for another card. So that's good for me. Wonder if we get to eat that Misty Rainforest. Cost me an awkward amount of life, but I think it's most certainly worth it. My opponent probably can't really pressure my life total much at all. I will go ahead and play out Moxen now. There's no Lavinia here. There's no Mystic Remora in play right now either. That was potentially a good opportunity for my opponent to play two to fetch with their Misty Rainforest, so that might have been a small misstep from my opponent. Yep. So we're kind of pre-side. No, I don't think that was an oops. I think that's an I'm conceding anyway. I think we're kind of pre-sideboarded for this matchup. Like, we have Spirits and Thalias and Thorns and Glow Riders and Thought-Knots and Chalice. I don't really know that I need to adjust anything here. Like, the things that are in my sideboard have fringe things that they can do. Like, I could bring in Remorseful Cleric for like Yawgmoth's Will or Mystic Sanctuary type things over, like, say, Eldrazi Displacer, which maybe isn't going to be fantastic anyway. This is a cleric, right? This is a cleric, it makes my mana a little bit easier. I could, like, try Angel's Grace, but don't really think I'm going to Mize wins like that in this matchup. Whew! Whew! Yes. Um. Yeah, so this probably goes like Ancient Tomb, Jet, Pearl, Archon, Chalice on zero in some order, with me casting the Moxen before I cast my Chalice on zero. Alright, well, opponent gets to know what's up. The opener is spicy. Do you have Lavinia on turn one again? That's kind of a kick in the teeth. That's so good against this hand. Alright. So I also can't Chalice on one, right? If I cast Chalice on one, its CMC is 2. Geez, Lavinia, like, surprisingly wrecks this deck. That's really annoying. Let's draw Caracas. That'd be cool, huh? Ah. And I went from being able to play 4 cards on turn 1 to being able to play 0. That's brutal. Also, like, holy Painlands, Batman. This is a lot of damage. Opponent has, like, maybe 2 copies of that card in their main deck. Yeah, they are definitely the superior Hatebear deck. It sure looks like it. Opponent might also be watching, like, some Magic coverage or something and just be playing Vintage on the side. Do I really not have any 2/2s at 2 mana? I do too have 2/2s at 2 mana. Reaplecheap is a liar, confirmed. Reaplecheap, I'm sorry to hear that your Legacy Curses deck is bugged once again. Especially a kick in the pants right after, like, an amazing card got printed for your deck. What? Cruel reality kills you now? Uh, that's that's not how that's supposed to work. Yeah, I mean, Moto bugs come in waves. Like, when something breaks, everything breaks. Here we go. I find it unlikely that I'm straight up gonna die this turn, but my opponent probably, like, gets to value, play a couple of cards, and put the Lavinia back into play. Okay. Now, on to, what's my line? I think I just want my opponent to get 1 spell a turn, currently. I think I'm gonna go with this. It just really sucks that that cost me 3 life to do it. So if this gets Force of Willed, for example, and my opponent, like, attacks me down to 2, I don't actually get all that many more spells. So it's quite important for this to resolve. Varos in address. Thank you very much for following. Yeah, alright. Exactly what I just said. I didn't want to happen. This puts me to 13. I can take 4 more on my turn down to 9, and then play 2 cards, one of which can trade with Lavinia. Oh, Double Spirit is hot. Double Spirit is really hot. Why is there a stop in my draw step? This isn't a Vendilion click format. I could Chalice on 1 into Spirit of the Labyrinth instead. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm taking a lot of damage here, so, like, I really just need these bodies in play. And especially if one of these is just going to get counterspelled, like, via hard cast Force of Will. I need to be able to cast the second. The fact that all of my lands are pain lands is really rough right now. I will gladly trade a Spirit for a Lavinia. I just have to do that, I think. That unlocks my Moxen and my Chalice of the Void to just like be played out normally. Yeah, maybe they have another, like maybe they have a bounce spell of some kind that can get the Spirit of the Labyrinth out of play. All right. Guess I'll keep these two. I guess I junked the Remorseful Cleric. I don't need a threat currently, but I would like to like play out my two Moxen and then play Chalice of the Void. Okay, hold on. Choose 3 cards in your hand, click done to discard the rest. So I pick these 3. Then I'll click done. That's a rough 2-for-1 after the way this game has gone. I think I'm okay unless my opponent like plays another Lavinia here, in which case that is just brutal. I am up so much clock. Like, that's not gonna matter. My opponent probably isn't going to time out, but like, ow. So every time this game, I've said it would really suck if my opponent had this. They've had it. Like, the Lavinia was brutal, the second Lavinia was brutal, the Force of Will was bad, the paradoxical outcome was bad. I have to stop calling these shots. And I don't think I could have played the Chalice on my turn, because, like, my life total is so precious. I'm getting clocked for 2 by the Lavinia each turn, and taking 2 to actually go and, like, just put something in play that doesn't stop this seems very bad for me. Yeah, remember when I discarded Remorseful Cleric? I remember. Alright, I'm F6. Do your thing. I don't think I concede when I'm up 6 minutes on clock. Normally I think I'd call it a day here, but it is a very real possibility that if my opponent has to combo off in a game 3 scenario that they just time out while doing it. Okay, they just had a tendrils. That's fine. That makes it easy. So I know my opponent has Yogswell now. So I could bring in a Grafdigger's Cage, but I think that's medium minus most of the time. Like, I just got smacked around by Lavinia's that game, and I lost because of it. Like, the Lavinia effectively countered 4 spells on turn 1. Yes, I would like to play first. Yes, I would like to keep this hand. Normally I want more Hatebears than just this, but I think this is too good to throw back. And if my opponent counters the Thalia on 6, and then I just play Aspirant into Aspirant into Aspirant, that's a hell of a clock. Of course, this is where my opponent would go like Island Ancestral and just like catch up from the mulligan and Force of Will instantly, and I cry myself to sleep. Okay, opponent doesn't have more land after all that. This Caracas is also like insanely good for me. That means Lavinia doesn't get to muck with me this game. Got a PO in there? Deal. All right, Lavinia. This time things look a little bit better for the home team. This is great. My opponent could have forced blue card, but then they wouldn't have played out the Lavinia in all likelihood. So I'm just going to drop this and then crash in for a bunch of damage. Please. Please, I have used half the amount of time you have. Let me do my thing and crash in with Luminarch Aspirant. I just have my opponent dead in 2 attacks as well. Aspirant into Aspirant is super aggressive. I have 6 on board showing the Luminarch Aspirant will make it 7 on board. And it's a 2-turn clock, even if I only resolve one of the 2 aspirants. Yeah, like Demonic Tutor is good, Balance is good, but I don't know that either one of those things is like slam dunk, I win the game. Like, assuming I can keep one card, a Luminarch Aspirant murders pretty quickly. And my opponent's cantrips are kind of bad currently because they can't, like, cantrip into balance or something like that. That's good. How do I use that most effectively? I think I try to play a counterable Luminarch Aspirant and then an uncounterable one. Although it's possible that I should just become the Monarch this turn. Because if balance happens, being the Monarch is so good. Yeah, I think I like that. It's the same clock. It'll still be 2 turns. 5 this turn puts them to 9. Then I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I think since Jailer is lethal next turn as well, I should just play Jailer. I forgot Archon was symmetrical as well. I'm not used to playing with that Hatebear. So since this is an each player, I also just like can't do both. Okay. Just naturally drawn ancestral with no cantrips. You have a brainstorm. Bounce spell. I don't care what it is, just cast it, please. Like, yeah, I don't understand bouncing the Palace Jailer there. Like, bouncing the Archon seems to be the only way that opens them up to possibly win. Like, bounce the Archon into a PO that is just like the absolute perfects. Seems like it has a chance of letting them in. I don't know. Maybe they're not familiar with the Monarch and they thought if I lose Palace Jailer, I like lose the Monarch status. I'm not exactly sure. I like I think our opponent either doesn't know Vintage well and hence was playing incredibly slowly, or is doing something other than just playing Vintage. Like, this is up on their second monitor while they're watching some super hype Mana Traders event or something like that. Like, we used a third of the clock our opponent did, so. And most of that time was our opponent just sitting there. So it's really hard to tell where exactly they were at in terms of their decisions because of that. Um, but impressions after the first game were that we have a lot of pain lands. Like in the blue matchups, it's not like super relevant, but we saw like our opponent having Lavinia was a decent amount of pressure with this number of pain lands. Doing your taxes while playing Vintage. Well, that sounds like a great way to melt your brain just completely out of your skull and have it leak out of your ear hole. And if you're into that, like, cool. But usually sitting down and doing my taxes is a couple hour affair of me going like, which form do I need? God, I don't know where to put this. I think I put this here. TurboDax didn't yell at me, so I guess this is fine. Doing taxes as an American is all sorts of interesting. Especially with the streaming stuff. Like, I did a lot of Googling to try to make sure I put stuff into the right categories for that. I have a Black Lotus in my hand, so I'm going to keep my hand. Go on. I like where this is going. Alright. So I guess the hope now is that the opponent has crippled themselves just as much as they've crippled me. Do I have any way to get a Stony Silence out of play? No, that lives there. Okay. So I go this land, pass. Yep. That was sort of as expected. I'm going to take the slightly less efficient play of playing out Silent Clearing first. The Karakas is technically better because if they play a 2-drop legendary creature, I get ahead. But in a world where I get wastelanded, I would rather have the Karakas later on in the game. We're gonna settle in for what could be a very awkward mirror match. I think I'm trading here. My opponent's Thalia is quite awkward. Like, I have Karakas, they have Karakas. I don't have Karakas. Offer a trade of Arbiter for Cleric? Because I can't, like, profitably block either of these. Oh, nice. I'm, like, very happy with this. Oh god. Exile your Stony Silence. If this game goes on a little longer, and I can drop a Palace Jailer or a Thought-Knot Seer, I think I just win. Oh god, that was a very awkward play. Playing that Arbiter turned on their Ghost Quarter. I did not realize that was going to happen immediately. What a terrible line of events. And it's like so relevant too. Wonder if I wasn't supposed to play that cat out. Just like guaranteed to take 2 more damage. Archon is silently very good against me as well. Because it means like Caracas is no longer an easy out to the Thalia. That was rough. Did not expect to lose to turn 1 Stony Silence in game 1. I'll probably bring in some amount of this stuff. Like, Thorn's not really good. Chalice is interesting on the play, but like probably not where I want to be as a whole. Glow Rider's not really fantastic. And my opponent's Arbiters are better than my Arbiters, so I'm going to go ahead and trim one of these. Yeah, this is a case where we have a whole bunch of bad cards and not enough cards to bring in. But that's okay. I don't expect to play like the mono white mirror match most of the time. So like I'm good with that. I probably have bigger creatures than my opponent. So I'm hoping to like leverage that as games go along. This has no white mana. That's unfortunate. I think this is a keep. I think I bottom this Thought-Knots here. This has like Containment Priest Eldrazi Displacer combo as the game goes along, or if I spike a Soul Land, this is just fantastic. Alright, now we're dead to a Swords to Plowshares, unfortunately. I don't know that you can take a turn to do what our opponent just did there, but they did it. And it worked. Quantum Activist, thank you very much for following. If you hate bears, well, you're not going to see any bears here, don't worry. Humans, clerics, that sort of stuff, we got those in spades. Alright, like, we just didn't get to play Magic this match. I'm not going to concede because our hand is, like, theoretically quite good if I spike a basic planes. Alright, oh, now I'll concede. Yeah, I don't mind playing against Vintage Hatebears, but, like, we should be approximately equal in the mirror, and, like, I just flopped around it and it didn't do anything in 2 games. Like, I probably have better endgame than my opponent does based on how the builds were looking, but I just didn't get to do anything. Hello and welcome. We have lots of cuties here other than just me, like Glow Rider. Look at Emma? Unclear. No, we're going into round 3 here. Keep? Jet? Good luck. You too. So we're going Jet, Lotus. One is F6'd. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I could go 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Can I do all of this? 3. I can make 4 white. So if I go Ancient Tomb, I can do everything? I just have to play Archon last. 3, 4, 5. No, no, no. I have 6. So I should go Archon and Spirit this turn, and I should make one of them uncounterable. I need to lead on Spirit. Then I'll make the Archon uncounterable. No, I won't. They're at 6th, and I want to be able to cast this next turn, so let's put this on Human. Like that draw. What you're working with. This might just get a concession, though, honestly. Like, I'm attacking for 5. I have so much power. Yeah. I think that's a good concession. Hey, Arkin, welcome. We're having a good time playing some vintage here. We saw Misty Rainforest in game 1. That's all we saw. Let's see if our good old opponent has put up any vintage results recently. I don't know what they're doing in vintage. I only like have experience with their play in Legacy. So they played a black-green deck. So they did try a lands deck in vintage somewhat recently. Do I like hard call and bring in Leylines? I'm going to bring in Remorseful Clerics one way or another. I just think that's a fine card to board in when you don't know what your opponent's doing. And I think I'm going to trim 2 Palace Jailers. So this like vintage lands finish was in June, so I don't know that I want to like board in Leylines. Just kind of like on a whim. I think I'm just going to submit this, and if I see a whole bunch of like spooky graveyard-based stuff, we can readjust after this game. Arbiter will probably be really good if this is like a lands-based matchup. Okay. This is a reasonable, like, legacy hand. I don't know that this is a good enough vintage hand. I think I'm gonna mulligan once and try to find something that has some power. Eh. This is like the same hand, except it can chalice on 0 on the draw when my opponent has already played out their Moxen. I don't think I'm gonna accept this. I think I'm gonna go one more time. Because we can, like, certainly get a hand of this quality again. Eh. Alright. Need to get rid of 2 of these. think I'm gonna go with those. Just keep enough lands so that if I get wastelanded or something, I'm still in this game. Alright, so we might just be playing against something fair like Bug. A colored shops deck? Alright. Okay, so what's the play against that? I can't double spell this turn with like Ancient Tomb as one of my mana sources. Rosal Clark's kind of awkward against Crucible of Worlds in terms of timing. Ancestral might be like one of the few blue cards that my opponent is playing. They might be. Thanks. They might be playing like Time Walk Ancestral or something like that. Yeah, maybe like Time Walk Ancestral Tinker. We're just gonna like lean into this Tabernacle. And let a Wasteland just ruin me. My opponent has said, okay, not that much luck. Fair. Don't hate that. I guess I like put this into play. I am not 100% sure exactly what's going on with the other side of the battlefield. The Bazaar could represent instant speed 1/1s, so I'm going to put one counter on each of my Luminarch Aspirants. I don't know how fair this Bazaar is. Like, I don't know if this is just an I'm playing Bazaar because it's a powerful looting engine sort of thing. Oh wow, that's just discarding 3 lands. I guess that's like drawing 3 cards with Crucible. I'm not going to nuke their graveyard. I want to be able to play around a single removal spell on Spirit of the Labyrinth. Alright, got there. Bazaar could theoretically discard wow, just total brain fart. Like a Basking Root Walla. Like, that's something that theoretically could happen. It's probably unlikely, but it's something that I want to be aware of. Like, when you don't know what your opponent is doing, if you can play around something that realistically might be in their deck and it doesn't cost you anything, you should probably do so. So, like, do I think my opponent has Basking Root Wallet? No, I don't think so. But I can play around it for free. And dispersing those counters onto the Luminarch Aspirants rather than just loading up on the Spirit is probably good too. Dr. Stacks, I'd say we're doing pretty well. We're 2-1 with Hatebears currently. We've only dropped the mirror. And the mirror was rough. We got obliterated. But we're having fun. Oh, Teroid. Okay, now that you mentioned that, I think I saw someone in the Vintage Discord server post this list. It was just like play all of the best cards in Vintage deck, right? Like it had Bizarre for like hollow ones basically exclusively. Yeah, okay. Also, just like as an aside, I'm super stoked that so many people are showing up to watch me play Vintage. Like I got into Vintage a couple of weeks ago, prepping for Eternal Weekend, and I've played off and on a handful of times before that. But like I fell in love with the format in a testing for Eternal Weekend. So I'm just like super glad that like people are on board with this format. Like I'm really glad that it's picking up a little bit more steam after Eternal Weekend. And I hope we get more events like this that just like get people fired up about the format. Yeah, this is the best Vintage format that I have ever played. Like, I will keep this hand. It's not like Hate Bear into Hate Bear, but it's Hate Bear into Luminarch Aspirant while also protecting Thalia. And I think that's fine. Is Dredge actually overpowered, or does Dredge just have good matchups versus the decks that people are playing? Oh, Tabitha, I'm glad you enjoyed that. I will play more Historic. I can guarantee that. Um, I like the mono white life gain deck there quite a bit. I'm interested in goblins there as well. I'm using mono white life gain to just kind of like learn the format, and then I'll pick a real deck and actually invest from there. Yeah, Teroi. The best hands that Dredge and Hogak have are obnoxious. Like unquestionably. But like I played a lot of Hogak and I never felt like that deck was unfair. Because every unfair thing that you can do is balanced by something else, especially Tabernacle. Like you can make 12 power on turn one, maybe 4 of which is hasty, and then your opponent just goes Tabernacle pass, and like that game is basically over. I will say that my win percentage was very high with Hogak, like much higher than I expected. I forget what it was, but I was something like 70 or 75% with Hogak over the course of a week. Yeah. I started playing Arena last Friday, I think, and I'm platinum in both limited and constructed. I'm posting a Kaladesh remastered draft to YouTube tomorrow. If you've been following me for a while and you want to do something to help me out, watch that video or at least the draft portion of that video and leave me comments. Like I'm really trying to get better at draft. It's one of the things that I'm very actively working on right now. Like I'm recording my drafts and rewatching them for my own purposes. I'm listening to podcasts, doing like some reading and research and stuff. So like I would really appreciate feedback on my drafting. It is a little rare to see a Chrome Mox in Vintage. I don't know exactly what that indicates. We're gonna be playing against like a wheel deck with like hull breachers or something. Oh, it's a straight up storm deck. Okay. I mean, if you opened a hull breacher in a draft, like, congratulations, first of all. Enjoy your $70. Yeah, all right, my hand just got way worse. If I draw a Mox, things are maybe okay, because I can just play Thorn, but if I don't draw a Mox, it's like very not good. I think I will bully the crap out of my opponent's deck when I'm on the play. Mox! Get. I am like very likely dead next turn. I think I just go Plains Pass rather than like try to put a Cavern into play. Yeah, so my opponent's combination of Time Walk into Windfall after playing out a bunch of stuff was really strong. Yeah, so I think the courts are like 10-ish dollars, and Hull Breacher and the black one, Opposition Agent, are both well above 50. Uh, the price is fluctuating a little bit. They were like 50 yesterday. They were 70 when I looked earlier today. And like they are vintage and legacy staples. People want them. Oh yeah, we are doing work with some white creatures. We got windfalled for our entire hand though, which was pretty rough. Like we went from having turn one Thalia to having turn one nothing. Alright, surely I'm dead, right? Like Demo Tutor for Lotus, activate Wishclaw Talisman, do some other cool things in the middle, kill me. I must be dead. Do you have the ability to dead me and play Defense Grid? That's impressive if so. So Storm counts 5. This can just be Yogwill. Or Dark Petition? Dark Petition for Yogwill. Yep. I have nothing to lose by making my opponent show me the tendrils, so I'm going to make them show me the tendrils. I mean, my opponent had a lot in order to get to the situation that they got to, right? So they had Moxland Time Walk for turn one, and then the Windfall for turn two, which took me off of my very good turn one play, and I didn't redraw a Moxen. Like this sort of thing happens. Okay. Cleric is okay. Grafsticker's Cage and Angel's Grace are things that I can consider. I don't know that I will go for either of them. Maybe I'll play Cage. Like Palace Jailer is not a card that has text in this matchup. Angel's Grace doesn't stop tendrils. Oh man. Yeah, it doesn't. Damage that would reduce your life to a little less than one reduces it to one instead. So Containment Priest doesn't do anything, right? Like, this is just a 2-2 with Flash. Like, that's kind of cute with a Windfall effect, I guess. Oh, their plan B is Tinker. Okay. With that information, then Eldrazi Displacer is kind of whatever. I think I'll play a couple, but I don't know that I'm willing to drop another relevant card. And, like, I still value Luminarch Aspirant really highly. I don't know. Maybe I do that. Like, it's hard for me to beat a Sphinx, especially if I'm cutting these Palace Jailers and the Eldrazi Displacers. Why Glow Rider over Vryn Wingmare? This was in the list that 5-0'd, and I made no changes to it. Presumably it's for Cavernous Souls on Human, which hits Aspirant, Thalia, Glow Rider, as well as Containment Priest. This has no white mana. Eh. There's no power. This is like one of those hands where if my opponent just like plays out a couple of Moxen and then windfalls me, this hand is incredibly awkward and does nothing. This is probably acceptable on 6. This is like a legacy hand though. Duress. Yes. Resolves. I think I'm gonna uncounterable Arbor rather than uncounterable Thalia. I'm not 100% sure. Like, my opponent fetched basic Swamp, so I might be able to cut them off of blue mana entirely by playing Arbiter here. I think I really like that. This also, like, would stop a Tinker in addition to just, like, fetch lands, and also stops, like, Demonic Tutor and such. Smug through time. Thank you very much for following, as well as Yuka34. I missed you a few minutes ago. Hope you all are enjoying the hot vintage action. I do love ponders where my opponent can't, like, pick the best one and then fetch. Archon's great follow-up as well. Like, each one of these hits hard and from a slightly different direction. I really like the options that are available to me. I believe Archon is going to be my next one. Because in addition to stopping my opponent from fetching, I would also like those fetch lands to enter tapped. It's really insult to injury. Is this one of the formats that you hate Archon in? Because, like, Archon seems, like, so fair by vintage standards. Like, I can see hating Lavinia. Like, Lavinia is super obnoxious and, like, punishes you for being on the draw? Like, very badly. Like, you don't get to cast your spells ever if you are on the draw in some of those games. Like, that's brutal. Archon just slows you down. Like, Archon is annoying. But I don't feel like it's just game over. Okay. My opponent will, like, be able to fetch now. Like, Sol Ring is a great card that allows them to, like, pay that tax and then, like, have somewhat of a turn. How do I play this turn? So Containment Priest stops Tinker-based lines. And is the only way that I can double spell. Like, I can play Grafdigger's Cage to shut off the graveyard, and then play a Containment Priest on their turn to shut off a Tinker. That's very strong. Like, Thalia is an objectively good play, but my opponent might be able to, like, play through that and could potentially beat me if I go that route. So I think I'm just going to hold up uncounterable Containment Priest. Oh, yeah, I guess, like, Cage also does stop that, but I get one spell per turn anyway. So, like, I can't Thalia now. Yeah, that's a good point. So this wouldn't stop Tinker for Bolas's Citadel, for example. And we are just using way less time than our opponents. Like, I know that I'm playing a deck that is, like, permanent based, but normally it's closer than this. Okay, that's fine. I probably have my opponent dead in 2 turns. I have 6 power for the next turn. Oh god, Tinker. Tinker, 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 Tinker. What are we doing? Oh, baby. So you paid to stop the search. So I can at least stop you from getting a creature. You can get the Bolas's Citadel, but you don't get another spell this turn? Then I attack for 6 and play either a Cage or Thalia. Yeah, if they get Bolas's Citadel, Cage neuters that. I haven't had that come up before. Wow, Tinker for Black Lotus. That's interesting. That that makes me want to Thought-Knot Seer them. That really makes me just want to Thought-Knot Seer them. 2, 4, 6. Yeah. Let's crash in for damage first. Yeah, whoever said bring in Containment Priest for the Tinker backup plan was 100% right, and that was a really good call. Yeah, Deroy, well done. Okay. None of this does anything, right? 4 plus 6, 10 damage. Tendrils for 1 isn't anything. I'll take the Yawgmoth's Will. But I don't think any of their cards have text here. Alright, so now I need to get one on the draw. That's going to be a little harder. On the draw, do I want to have outs to the Sphinx getting into play? I don't think so. That might sound weird, but I'm playing a deck with no manipulation and no ability to tutor, so drawing the right card at the right time is really hard. And that probably means that I just want to execute my game plan as consistently as possible. And my game plan is play Hatebears and get my opponent dead. So no, we're not talking about Consecrated Sphinx, we're talking about Sphinx of the Steelwind. You can't tinker for a Consecrated Sphinx since it's not an artifact. So the only slots that I'm considering changing are the 2 Luminarch Aspirants for either Palace Jailer or Eldrazi Displacer. But I don't really think Eldrazi Displacer is nuts, and it's really hard to draw Palace Jailer at the right time and also have mana for it. I think I'm going to go ahead and submit as is. I mean, hand's pretty good. I have 2 pieces of power and multiple Hatebears. This is probably turn 1 Archon, followed by turn 2 Thalia and Remorseful Cleric. There is a world where I just play a Thalia effect here, specifically because of a Tinker that's already in my opponent's hand. I like Archon better in most of those other scenarios, but if my opponent has naturally has the Tinker, then playing Glowrider or Thalia this turn keeps them from playing Tinker next turn. But I don't know if I'm supposed to play around Tinker. When the Archon is better in so many other scenarios. I think I'm going to go ahead and Glowrider. I can't double spell next turn if I play my own Archon, which might fuck me up just as much as it does my opponent, because I really want to be able to double spell, and stacking Glowrider with Thalia against a deck like this should just be GG. Like, if I get to go Glowrider, Thalia, Remorseful Cleric, and I've priced my opponent out of, like, a Tinker type effect, and also Storming Off while covering the graveyard as well, it seems like a great range. What could my opponent be thinking about? They could have, like, a repeal that they're thinking about casting for, like, 0. They could be thinking about what they're going to have for dinner. Always a possibility. Um, they could be thinking about whether or not they can just beat this. It should be hard to beat this with no cards in graveyard. Like, Cabal Ritual is one of the easiest ways to power through a Thalia effect. Yeah, my opponent is either, like, thinking very hard or is distracted, like our potentially like one of our previous opponents was. But, like, this time discrepancy is crazy in these matches. I will feel kind of dumb if I had the chance to resolve Archon and I didn't, and then my opponent storms off through it. But it feels like this line's good. Maybe I'm playing too scared around, like, the possibility of Tinker, but this is a situation where I have the ability to easily play around something that beats me without it costing me anything. That's true. So I know my opponent has Swamp Island. So they would have to have Tinker plus Basic. Like, the upside to playing Glow Rider is that, like, double spelling is still on the table for the next turn, which is huge. My opponent's trying to pay costs on something. But what? No, I will not sacrifice a land. All right, we'll see how bad that is. We'll see if that's like I'm dead bad, or if that's just like my opponent is drawing 3 cards bad. My opponent is going to windfall me, take the draw 5. Oh, now they're going for the Tinker. Okay. Do they go for the creature or Bolas's Citadel? Bolas's Citadel. Okay. They can potentially whiff with Bolas's Citadel. Woo-hoo-hoo! Yes! Okay. Now, I think it has to be Archon. Just give them 1 spell a turn. I'm going to think about it for a second just to make sure I'm not wrong. Like, the Thalia effect can potentially be powered through, but I don't think my opponent can power through Archon. Yeah. Alright, let's see how this goes. Z Young, thank you very much for following. A bit of a nail biter here. Hope you're enjoying it. Yeah, you got your 1 spell. You're done. And I think I just play a backup Archon. I view that as the most valuable effect that I have access to right now. I don't want to lose to, like, another Chain of Vapor effect bouncing one of these. This gets the blood flowing, right? Like, the opponent has something, like, big, awful, and scary in play. And I am trying to beat my opponent to death with a couple of Archons before they ruin me. Let's go with the Thalia now. Like, mana efficiency is not something that I need to be thinking about at all, because I only get 1 spell a turn. So it doesn't matter to, like, playing Thalia versus Glow Rider. It'll push the Thalia. I'll bounce it. I think that's just my opponent taking advantage of the fact that, like, they can cast a spell. Alright, this is why I need a double Archon in play. Actually, I should attack first. For Echoing Truth specifically. I would like a colorless source so I can cast Thought Knots here on my turn. Like, holy crap, I really want that. I don't know what my opponent can get, though. I want to take it, whatever it is, but I don't know what my opponent can get that can beat me. Like, I put them to 2, they can't storm off with Bolas's Citadel anymore. Massacre doesn't kill both my creatures. I mean, I tried the Archon in Legacy, and I wasn't super impressed. I felt like the Archon was very similar to Thalia Heretic Cathar, where if you can power it out as a turn 1 or turn 2 card, it's quite good. And if you can't, it feels like it's lost most of its relevance by turn 3 or 4. So it's better in, say, a Maverick deck that can accelerate it out via Noble Hierarch or an Ancient Tomb deck than it is in a deck that is just trying to play it on turn 3 naturally or turn 4 off an Aether Vial. So I would lean towards the Archon not being Legacy playable while being Vintage playable. We're going to ship this. This hand's too fair. We're going to ship this. This hand's too slow. I'll keep this hand. How many cards? All right, I have to get rid of 2 of these. I'm playing Thalia into Glowrider. That's this game. That probably stops most combo decks, and they're both uncounterable. I guess that means I'm shipping both of these. This is a deck that Thalia is good against. We're in business. Shit. We have the wrong hand for this matchup. We're better off probably if this is Golos Shops. This is Ravager Shops and they can just start pooping bodies. Yeah. Shit. Alright. I need to draw something like a Palace Jailer, I think, to really take advantage of this game. My opponent is just going to like create a large Stonecoil Serpent, and then I'm going to die. Or that, yeah. Well, I can't really block here. I think I just, like, concede this game if I don't draw. Uh... Uh... I'm going to play on, but I'm dead. We mulliganed to 5 and kept a hand that was going to be stellar versus a blue deck, but just is unplayable here. What are you doing? You just have another? If they have another land, it might make sense. Then they can stop the double blocks next turn. I feel like my situation could be worse. Yeah, there we go. Now I have to triple block because my opponent can put a counter on Walking Ballista, which didn't die because of Chief of the Foundry. The triple block to trade with this, and then, like... Yeah. Okay, we're done. So historically, when I have played these Hatebear decks of all natures, the shops matchup has been atrocious and like a reason to very actively avoid these decks. You'll notice we don't really have stuff in the sideboard for this matchup either. Like, I might adjust some of my cards. I don't think I want Thorn. I might keep Chalice on the play, but that's kind of trying to mise games. I need this stuff to hit play. A lot of the stuff down here just isn't that good. We're gonna board in Containment Priest to like keep the Containment Priest Eldrazi Displacer Dream alive, but that's not exactly fantastic. I think I'm gonna go with Spirit of the Labyrinths out, and then junk a Glow Rider maybe. The variant of shops that my opponent is playing is also one of the better versions against me. Like against Golos shops, the arbiters are like at least serviceable. Okay, is this an acceptable hand? I get turn one Thalia and Chalice of the Void, and I have late game. But if my opponent just goes like workshop into creatures, I probably lose. This hand has the possibility of mising a game. I am going to keep it. I'm not super stoked about this. But I don't think we're beating a lot of the like good workshop hands anyway. Like we're here to bully blue decks. If I draw a land, hand's okay. Don't draw a land. This is a little more questionable. Okay, cool. Okay, no, that's not how I want to tap that. So I have to pay life here, and I can pay colorless here. That's just better. What am I exiling? The Foundry Inspector? Or the Steel Overseer? I probably just like try to trade with the Foundry Inspector and like maintain the Monarch. And I'm no longer the aggressor. I'm trying to turtle up and just like grind my opponent out now. Please don't have Walking Ballista. Hmm. That's actually pretty annoying. makes blocking a little tough. My opponent could theoretically put 3 counters on their 4/3 and essentially trade my board for theirs. I would be good with. That would favor me, since I'm the Monarch. And I can still play Archon of Emeria, even if I get wastelanded. Oh, fuck. Good God. That ruined everything. Now I can't beat. Now their largest creature can be far larger than my largest creature. I'm stone cold dead here. I can't beat this board. Like if I let the opponent take the Monarch, they get the Steel Overseer back, and yeah. My opponent dumped their whole hand on turn 3 through Thalia and Chalice. And Eldrazi Displacer doesn't even quite do it. I don't have the color source for that either. I don't think Kataki's great against this deck. Like, they would tap 3 lands, keep these, and I'd be pretty far behind still. Alright, I think I'm going to block and block and force my opponent into some action that hopefully results in their Ravager dying. And if their Ravager dies, and then I top deck another Palace Jailer taking out the scariest threat, maybe I get there. Hey Nathan, welcome. Hey Menifer, welcome. Yeah. This is bad for me. I will play the creature with the largest butt and hope to draw another Jailer. Mean? Yeah, I will be excited for Magic Online to fix the game-breaking bugs associated with that. Hold up. They just attacked Walking Ballista into this? Like, are they willing to throw away their Walking Ballista? That's so good for me. So they can pump, turn it into a 2/2, and I kill it. This is good for me. Like, they become the Monarch, but... Yeah, done. I think I have to re-exile the Steel Overseer. Oh my god, Eldrazi Displacer Containment Priest? I think my opponent threw away a lot of percentage points with how they played this one. This is just a 2-2. It can become a 3-3, though, by tapping this factory, so that's a little awkward. I do want to be taking out bodies, though. I need to protect my life total. I also need a... Oh no, I have a colorless source. Yeah, I think I need to protect my life total here. So let's go ahead and double block this land and take it off the field. And then this Mishra's Factory is only a 2-2. Okay. What is the line? I can Eldrazi Displacer and Luminarch Aspirant in this turn cycle and just try to create some larger creatures that buy me time. And then next turn, if I draw a land, I can gun down 2 of my opponent's cards. Maybe I just... like, Aspirant turning this into a 3-3 is quite strong, kind of. It's really tough. Because I don't know, like, how many creatures my opponent is going to swing out with. I'm really at 7 life, because I need to tap this. One of these for colored mana. I'm doing this. And then it's a question of, like, do I aspirant or not? Aspiranting is, like, Aspirant is a good chump blocker for this Foundry Inspector. I kind of want to do that, and then I only get to exile one of their things on the following turn cycle if I rip a land. I think that's okay. Thought I had no business being in this game. I probably don't. My opponent probably just like wastelands both my Shepherd Dunes and I'm in trouble. Oh man, maybe that was a reason to like play Containment Priest instead. Shit. Yeah, that's disastrous. So now my opponent shoots Aspirant, shoots Jailer, attacks in. I have to chump block. And then I'm dead next turn. Alright, we needed to fade that. I mean, I will gladly not take 6 this turn and be dead on board. Like, if I don't jump block. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can Thought Knot that card away. No, I can't. So the world in which I win is the world in which my opponent allows me to kill them. Yeah, if I tap this. Alright, I think my opponent has made a number of sequencing and combat math errors in this match. But, like, just the nature of the matchup is such that I'm really far behind from the get-go, so that didn't matter. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and pack it in there. Unfortunate. Alright, so we 3-2'd with this deck. That's not it. It's this one. Kind of as expected, we beat the blue decks and we lost to the non-blue decks. Yeah, if you're signing up for something like this, I think that's where you're expecting to be. The sideboard is really slanted in favor of beating graveyard-based decks. I don't know about these Angel Graces. I kind of think that these should just be like Swords to Plowshares or something for like fair matchups. Like, I basically have nothing for shops. The Containment Priests are kind of cool, but like I feel like I need a lot for shops. Maybe that match is just like so bad that you're not supposed to play cards for it. To make a comparison for the Legacy fans here, you're not supposed to put cards in your sideboard specifically for elves when you're playing D&T because the matchup's so miserable. So that's the sort of thing that like might be happening here. You might just be like so not favored against a deck that can just tap for 3 off a single land that you're not supposed to play cards for it. But my thoughts after playing this league are that I would maybe like to mess around with these 5 slots. I think Remorseful Cleric is medium. It's fine. I'd rather main deck that card than sideboard that card, though. So I would like to play around with, like, 3 Swords to Plowshares in the spot of Angel's Grace. You lose your turn 1 play versus Doomsday, but I think that's okay. So I might be looking at doing something like this, and then maybe this, so I still have another turn 1 play versus Doomsday. I think if I was going to try this again, this is where I would go. There's another deck that I was looking at trying out. I think it was this one. No. Another 5-0. I think it was Serve's deck list. Just for those of you thinking about like playing some weird spicy things in Vintage, I also came across this 5-0, which has Slippery Bog Bonder. It allows you to put a hexproof counter on another creature and then move counters around. This seemed really interesting. I don't know that it's good, but I saw this and immediately thought, like, wow, this is a really innovative deck list. I've never seen anything like this. But I think this deck has a few too many questionable cards. Like, Invisible Stalker is perhaps not a vintage playable card. Like, I would rather put counters on just like something stupid like a Lavinia rather than Invisible Stalker. Like, Lavinia is dumb, that card's great. This deck also was running Crystal Vein, which I thought was just like Mad Lad tech. And a bunch of Hushbringers in the sideboard. Like, this deck was doing interesting things, and it was on my radar of things to potentially try out. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and call it here. Folks, if this is your first time here for Vintage, please consider following. I'm trying to make Vintage a regular part of my streams from here on out. And if you're really enjoying my content, please consider subscribing to the channel. My numbers have been down since COVID started and all that. And, you know, getting subs is just a nice little pat on the back that says, hey, keep doing what you're doing. We love it. I'm going to see if I can find someone who is streaming some Vintage. Vintage regulars, if you know someone else who is currently streaming, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm just gonna do a quick search of the main page.